Hello and welcome to this WineGB webinar on vine pest and disease management. We have got a few technical issues to those participants who've already joined. We don't seem to be able to get the video of our speakers up, and it's something that I've done, and I'm not quite sure what I've done, but if we can work it out during this, I will do. But we can share this screen so we can have the speakers slide showing. So I just really want to apologise for that. Okay, I'd like to briefly introduce our speakers. Our first speakers are Matt Strugnell, Vineyard Manager, Ridgeview Estate, and Alex Valsecchi, Vineyard Manager at Albury Organic Vineyard. They're both going to be from the screen that says Matt Strugnell. And between them, they will cover disease management and common disease identification. And then Alex will discuss the organic and biodynamic options for control. Then we will have Ben Brown. Ben is a fruit agronomist from Agri, and he will speak about spray programs, mode of action, and resistance management. And then last, but certainly not least, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Andrew Landers from Cornell University, but he's now back on his home turf here in the UK, and he will cover effective spraying, correct application, and calibration. So after all the presenters, they will stay and be on a panel for a Q&A session. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A icon. Type your question there and it will come up just to the panelists, and I'll be able to see those and select the questions for our speakers. If you want to send a message to everybody, then you can use the chat icon. And this webinar will be recorded and available on the WineGB website in a few days' time. So now I will hand over to Matt and Alex, if you'd like to share your screen and slides.
Thank you, Jo. We bring it back to the first slides. There we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and the other hosts. Thank you for letting us speak again. After the Frost webinar, we must have done something right. So today, pests and diseases, well, the weather that we had today, it probably summarized it all. This is typical British summer weather, and we had some very good start of the year, and we experimented some sort of Mediterranean temperature a couple of weeks ago, and then overnight we seem to have lost it all. And now that we're entering some of the crucial stages of grapevine growing, i.e. flowering, we had nothing about rain and quite cool temperatures. So hey ho, but that is nothing new really to all of you that they've been growing vines in this country for quite a while, and it's perfect weather for diseases to spread, of course. So we're talking about the major pests and diseases. There's numerous of those, but perhaps these are the ones that they are of greatest importance, and probably the easiest one to spot and deal with. The big pests, of course, the deers, the rabbits, the birds. We won't mention the other bee pest because it's always a bit of a dodgy spot. There are those smaller pests that can perhaps be more damaging than the bigger pests, i.e. like mites, hairy-nosed mites, light brown apple moth, that the name suggests is typical of apples, but it does have a soft spots for vines too. And the spotted wing Drosophila, the Drosophila Suzuki. In terms of diseases, the most common ones that you will find in this country, as everywhere else where grapes are grown, powdery and downy mildew onto the leaves as well as onto the fruit and stems. But botrytis, which is always at the back of our mind, and it seems to flare up just as you're about to harvest your grapes, and then down to some that they perhaps not so noticeable to many, but nevertheless quite important, phomopsis and trunk disease.
So over time, you'll get to know your vineyards and where to look in your vineyard for sort of disease hotspots, as I like to call them. And these might be your sort of cooler made vineyards. So frequent monitoring of your crop and of your vines is very important, so that you get to know where these hotspots are and where the first place is to look for signs of disease might occur. And there are all sorts of monitoring tools available, but I believe there is none more valuable than someone like this handsome young chap here, who has the capability of imaging and carrying tools and moving around the vineyard without too much difficulty. And he, over a few years, might gain quite a lot of knowledge, and really it's all about learning your vines.
So how do we control the largest pest? Well, obviously, if you can, the best things to do is put up a deer-proof fencing all across your land. Not often is possible. So young vines, they can be extremely vulnerable. They're often found growing in tubes when you cannot enclose them within a fence. But then once they're growing up through the tubes, they become vulnerable to the previously mentioned deers. And once you start to remove the tubes, then they become vulnerable to the rabbits. Netting and bird scarer, obviously, for the other flying pest, i.e. the birds. Netting is perhaps not used very much in this country. It can be useful if you want to protect a smaller area, but it's a netting that just runs along the fruiting zone rather than go over and across the row. Because our vines, they tend to grow quite rapidly and continue to grow even up to harvest. And often you find that this net just end up to be a nuisance when the vines started to grow through it and you want to take it off in order to get to your fruit. We found bird scarer are quite useful, and they come in various form and shape. So you fly kites on the shape of buzzards or bird of prey, or you fly a helium balloon to frighten the high-flying birds. If you are friend with a gamekeeper nearby, that can be quite useful too. Monitoring and trapping, that is done also for pests, but smaller pests like the light brown apple moth mentioned earlier and the Drosophila suzuki, the spotted wings Drosophila. Of course, we have for pests and for diseases, chemical and biological control, along with cultural practices. So this is a typical delta trap. Is used for, and in this case, the light brown, a little sticky base. And how does it work? There is a little pheromone capsule inside the house that attracts the male of the moth. And you can then count the individual that you capture. And if you're working on a base of 5 plus bodies over a week, then you start to think, okay, perhaps I have to watch it a bit closely and maybe do something about it. Chemical and biological control and canopy management. Well, for the Erinos mite, not much is allowed in our world of organic and biodynamic growth, apart from use of solar and onwards. And that seems to keep the mites under control. For the light brown apple moth, we use Bacillus thuringiensis, which is sold under the name of Deeper. And how the bacillus work? Well, he's been chewed by the larvae of the light brown apple moth, and then the bacillus work by chewing the larvae from inside out. So I think that's pretty crucial as a death. I probably would rather be knocked on the head by a chemical within a few seconds, but it is very effective, and it is one of the greatest options that we have in integrated pest management. For the SWD, some vineyards have experimented kaolin clay, but generally we see that in organic and biodynamic especially, we are more targeting the canopy management. We know that SWD doesn't like to nest in very open spaces where there's a lot of bright light and a lot of air movement. They prefer to be in wet and damp and anyway dark spots. So by working on your canopy, keeping the canopy light, thinning out shoot, removing leaves within the areas of the fruit, that seems a way to improving light penetration, air movement will help against the pest.
Alex, do you mind me interrupting? We've just had some of the panelists say that they're stuck on this first slide of your presentation, which is strange because I can see as you move through the next slides, but some people are seeing only the first slide. I'm not quite sure why, because I'm seeing it. But what we can do for those panelists that can't see, we'll have the recording and you can see it there, and I can also send out the PowerPoint to people. I think we're really someone's got it in for us technology wise today. I'm really sorry, but I'll let you carry on, Alex, and we just have to send out the presentation afterwards.
It's okay. Thank you, Jo. But what we do on a biodynamic vineyard, as in organic vineyard, we try to encourage biodiversity. So that means that if you have not a monoculture of vines, but something else growing amongst your vines, that can be a cover crop, or you can just let the normal, the common flora surrounding your vineyard to colonize the rows, that will help to bring in beneficial insects. And I'm not just talking about the pretty things like the ladybirds and the butterflies, but more into parasitic wasps and lacewings, all other things that they perhaps don't look so attractive, but they're extremely useful, and also encourage biodiversity at fungal and bacterial level, because if you can colonize your leaves with good fungus and good bacteria, then there won't be much room for the baddies to take over. Okay, so I'm going to talk fairly briefly and give an overview of the three main fungal diseases that we deal with. The holy trinity, like powdery mildew, down. We're a bit tight on time, and we could dedicate an entire afternoon to talking about these things. But anyhow, so I'll start with powdery mildew. It happens quite readily in this country. It overwinters in the woody parts of the vine, and it can become very persistent if it's not well controlled. That's sort of from one season, it can carry over to the next quite easily. The initial spore release happens after a fairly modest amount of rainfall, and the temperatures don't have to be particularly high. Around, I think, just above 10 degrees is enough to release the spores. Then you will start to see some symptoms develop if the weather becomes humid, overcast,
fairly warm, anywhere in the 20s. And you could say that most season is would be classed as favourable conditions for powdery mildew. The spread of powdery can be alarmingly quick. Anything from seeing a few affected leaves or shoots to very significant amounts of infected fruit within a matter of a couple of days. There is supposedly the development of powdery mildew is halted when temperatures reach the sort of mid to high 30s, which is quite rare for us to achieve those sort of temperatures for many days in a row. I believe that the most high risk period for powdery development is when berries are around pea size, just before pea size berries, through to veraison, and then the risk seems to diminish once we get into the ripening phase. Things to look for: you will start to see yellow chlorotic spots on the upper leaf surface. On shoots, you might start to see some shoots where the leaves start to curl upwards slightly. They might have a slightly off-colour appearance. And then, of course, you're looking for the sort of grey sporulation on the slide, which I'm not sure all of you can see. It shows the difference between powdery and downy mildew. You get these grey sort of ash-like coloured spores that happen. It can happen on the upper surface of the leaf, and indeed on the shoots, where on the shoots they will start to develop sort of greyish dark lesions. And of course on the fruit, where you start getting grey spores on the fruit, these can actually be rubbed off by hand, but then you'll start to see scarring of the berries once you rub the spores off. And over time, the berries will start to become brittle and hard. They will start to turn blacker and start to crack and split. All quite ugly stuff, really. You can smell powdery mildew. Once you're tuned into it, you can start to smell it in the vineyard as well. It has a very sort of distinctive, musty kind of smell to it. And the best place to look are in the sort of shadier parts of the canopy. So really the best sort of cultural controls are to keep the canopy tidy, reducing shading and humidity, leaf stripping around fruit zones, trimming, good tucking in, avoiding clumping of shoots within the trellis, and proper level of pruning. So that is having good vine balance. So by doing that, you're promoting the right canopy thickness, the right leaf layer number, and so on and so forth. And Alex is just going to talk quickly about some organic controls.
Unfortunately, in organic and biodynamic, we're not allowed to use many products approved, and you will find, if you have received the Green Book, is of course sulfur, and some people use milk, and in biodynamic compost teas. And this goes back to what I said to you before about fungi and bacteria. There are out on the market other products that they see the use of yeast or other microorganisms, but you might need to check that out with the board that does with the body that does your certification, because often a product that might be approved by Demeter is not approved by Organic Farmers and Growers, or so I'm more than welcome in a separate site if you want to know about more, but then it will be down to you to investigate if you can use it specifically in your case scenario.
Okay, so moving on swiftly to downy mildew. The spores for downy mildew overwinter in soil, in leaf litter. Spore germination occurs in wet soil, and the sort of first initial release of spores, we had the 10-10-24 rule of thumb, which is 10 millimeters of rain with a mean temperature of 10 degrees. within a 24-hour period. That will release spores up into the vine canopy. That will, you might then see a primary infection. You might start to see a few oil spots on leaves, probably one in every, say, 50 meters as you walk through the vineyard. Then the second phase is, well, the secondary infection is where you will start to see more oil spots and many oil spots on individual leaves. These will, over time, start to coalesce and form large necrotic patches on the leaf until the leaf succumbs to the disease entirely. And if indeed this becomes, is let to run away with you, you will see sort of quite dramatic defoliation of the canopy. You might start to see oily on the fruit, on young developing fruit, sort of at fruit set sort of time, you'll start to see, you might start seeing some very white, fluffy kind of fungal growth on the berries. And as the berries develop a bit more, they getting to sort of a reasonable size, you might start seeing some berry shrivel as well. The oil spots are very well defined. They're quite obvious once you get to know them. It's a yellow spot, has a very shiny sort of oily appearance. And underneath that, you will see the fungal growth. So again, it's about promoting a sort of fairly open, nicely aerated canopy. You want to try and reduce extended periods of leaf wetness where you can. So you want the canopy to dry out quickly, particularly after overnight rainfall or overnight heavy dew. So again, Alex will talk about some organic control options.
Approved for organic is copper, and also within biodynamic prior request of a derogation, you can use copper. The quantity differ is 4 kilos per hectare per year on the organic, and is 3 kilos per hectare per year on a biodynamic. Again, all of this is stated in the green book. Biodynamically, we also use equisetum as a drench to the soil.
And last but by no means least, we have our friend botrytis. Favourable conditions for botrytis, high levels of humidity, tight bunches, dense canopies, heavy extended periods of rainfall in the lead up to harvest, we know can cause bunch compaction, berry splitting, and which can lead to the disease to progress. As we know that botrytis generally flares up where there is some sort of physical damage to, particularly on the fruit. I understand also that an infection can start late in flowering, an infection of the ovary on the flowers or in the bunches, but that infection may not become apparent until veraison, and we quite often see these sort of early during veraison, these sort of incidents of botrytis happening, and we're sort of scratching our heads where's that come from? My preferred method is to make sure that the canopy is nicely aerated right from flowering onwards. Things to look for, it's pretty obvious really. It's grey fungal growth, berry shrivel, all that sort of thing. I think we're all very familiar with it. Cultural controls, again, it's promoting an open canopy, leaf stripping around the fruit zone, reducing humidity, removal of prunings, and particularly of mummified fruit. So if not, if you've got fruit left behind after harvest, ideally that should be removed from the vineyard. Good vineyard hygiene. In particularly heavy cropping years or very heavy cropping areas of the vineyard, I found it helpful to do some fruit removal, not as a yield control, but as a disease control, to give the fruit some more space. quite often in a very crowded fruit zone, if one bunch catches a dose of botrytis, the neighbouring bunches will become infected quite quickly as well. So giving everything a bit of room. Regarding compaction, there's also been some work by Stefano Poni from University in Piacenza, talking about early leaf removal to reduce reduce bunch compaction. Some quite interesting work. You can look that up online. I think he's actually published a new paper last year that talks about this. Again, back to Alex.
Within organic and biodynamic, obviously we focus much greatly to the canopy management, the leaf stripping, the cluster thinning, the removal of fruit. If we start to see infection, we try to get through quite thoroughly and keeping the vineyard as clean as possible. We can use sulfur, seems to have a little bit of control. He has power of drying out things, but mainly our control is really serenade, so Bacillus subtilis. And there are other forms of bacilluses, but perhaps again not generally approved, but you can ask for a derogation with the body that certify you personally.
And that's us done.
That's pretty much it. We had to trim it down, but we're like the others to give you their ins and out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex and Matt. And eventually, I found the right button hidden away to get the video of the speakers up. So sorry, everyone. Thank you for bearing with me. And we do seem to have some lumpy internet, so I'm sorry about the sound, but I'm not sure where the origin of that is. Before I just move on and introduce our next speaker, Ben, I'd just like to remind you that WineGB produced a sort of crop walker symptoms guide, and of course we have the green book. So I will just try and share that screen with you now, so that you can just see what that looks like. So there we go. If you don't have a copy of this, then please just email me and I can put you in touch with where you can get the guide to recognising grapevine symptoms. And the green book is on the WineGB website. There we go. Right, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ben Brown, and hopefully he'll be able to share his screen. And Ben, I think if you start your presentation from the first slide, load it up, it should work. Let's have a go.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Joe. Hopefully that should. So, can everybody see that?
I can see that, Ben.
Yeah.
Because I've got that, but I have no idea what you guys can see. But
yeah, we're having some.
Right.
Yeah, people are seeing this. Do you want to just go to the next slide to see if it moves, and then go back just to check if that's okay?
Yeah.
Go to the next slide, and I can see that if you've gone back. I think we have overcome the gremlins. I hope so. Brilliant. Off you go then, Ben. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, Joe's asked me to do a little bit on how you develop a spray program. So it's going to be focusing mainly on principles of what I look for when I'm developing a spray program for growers, and what I talk about with growers and what we do in the vineyards. Probably not talking too much about specific products, but I can do if people want to ask questions about stuff afterwards. That's no problem. But yeah, I decided I'd focus on fungicides because it just keeps it a bit simpler, and means we can go a bit more in depth than perhaps we would otherwise. So this slide really, it summarizes the the type of things that I look at with growers and that we talk about as we're going round the vineyard. As Matt and Alex mentioned, the big three diseases for the UK are spot, downy, and powdery mildew. Now they're a huge problem for all of you, and you all have to deal with all of them to greater or lesser extent, depending on your specific sites and what you have to deal with. As a rule of thumb, I'm sure you all stick with essentially a 2-week program for spraying. Some of you will have to go more frequently if you're working on organic programs or things like that. But I'm going to base this whole idea on around a 2-week spray program. So other factors that then contribute to how you might work a spray program would be Grapevine Phenology, how quickly your canopy is growing, specific vineyard knowledge, so the weather, particularly susceptible areas, hotspots, and what you're seeing out and about in the vineyard. And then also, finally, on plant protection products and how the products work, the modes of action of the different products, and how we can use them when they distribute across the canopy. So phenology basically is the growth stage of the crop, whether you use BBCH or Bagliolini. Alex can probably say that better than me. But whether you use one of those two to look at the different growth stages you're at, they kind of determine the level of pressure that we'll see in a crop at different stages. And we're looking at different growth stages. We're looking at different pressures for different diseases. For example, for botrytis, we look at 4 real key timings for botryticides. That's, as Matt was saying, 80% caps off, full flower. That's at pea size or peppercorn size, at pre-bunch closure, and at veraison. So they're the main timings for botryticides. Throughout the year, earlier on in the year, we might be thinking about downy mildew more as an issue, and as we move through to July and August, we start to think about powdery mildew as the big problem that we've got to deal with. So another thing that might influence what products we're choosing is the rate of growth, how quickly the vines are growing. Contact products are obviously a lot less effective in quick growing vines than they are where canopies are developing in a more slowly, more gradual way. They'll only protect leaves that are covered, so you might look to use a more systemic product when vines are growing quickly. And also, old leaves are obviously less susceptible to disease. They're more rigid, old, and harder and more warning, so less susceptible. I don't know how many of you have seen a disease risk assessment before, but they can be really helpful for looking at disease risk periods and predicting what products you should use when. Obviously, they're all based on the disease cycles that Matt and Alex mentioned earlier, and the disease conditions that we're looking for. Whether it's the 10-10-24 for downy mildew, or that high humidity, low air movement associated with powdery mildew. But as you can see on this graph, this is a dark on disease model, but you can also get RimPro. As you can see here, today, as I'm sure you're all aware, for having been out in the vineyards, it's been quite high downy mildew pressure. And so if you were planning your disease, your fungicide spray round, you might either look to go in before with a stronger protectant product, or come in afterwards with a fungicide with some kickback or curative activity. So it's all well and good for agronomists to come and give you advice on this kind of thing, but no one knows your site better than yourselves. No one knows the hotspots more than yourselves. And no one knows what diseases you've had and will have as well as yourselves. So it's really a lot of this chemical choice has got to be about the pressures for your site and the history of your site. Whether that's because you've got a tree line that you need to think about, that's meaning that you've got dew staying around earlier in the morning and greater levels of leaf wetness throughout the day, increasing downy risk or botrytis risk, or you've got a more dense canopy that means that pesticide applications are affecting less of the canopy, and so you might need something with more systemicity. Obviously, as Alex and Matt have mentioned again before, canopy management is crucial, and I'm sure Andrew will mention this, but it doesn't matter how good the chemistry is. If you don't get good coverage, you might as well not bother going out at all, because no chemical that you use is that amazing. So moving on slightly. Oh, hang on, a bit too far. This is just the video that I picked up from the Fungicide Resistance Action Committee, and it's basically talking about resistance management and how to look after the chemicals that we have got to make them work better, and essentially how to preserve these chemicals and the different types of mode of action of these products. So I'm just going to play this just briefly, and then I'll chat through some powdery mildew products as examples of these factors afterwards. So hopefully that quite nicely summarises how to manage resistance and a little bit about what I say when I'm talking about MOAs or modes of action. So as you can see here in this graph, that's table that's up now, is I've got a list of some of the products that you might use for powdery mildew control throughout the year. And on the right hand side, it's got the group, or the mode of action group that FRAC has dictated. And so we've got sulfur, which is a multi-site, we've got Phelan, which is an SDHI, and we've got Nativo, which is a mix of two products. And we might look at these and say, okay, well, sulfur is multi-site, so it's a great way to avoid resistance developing in a crop, because it attacks the fungus in several different ways, so it can't do any point change mutations that would result in resistance developing. Similarly, Nativo is, as it was mentioned in the video, it's two products together. So not only does that reduce the development of resistance, but it also enhances the efficacy of the product. There's also Phelan and Scardis, which are both from the same mode of action, or both have the same mode of action. So you might look at splitting those two chemicals up. So you might apply a Phelan, either late flower or something like that, and then you might follow that with a Vivando before going back in with the Scardis, rather than using the SDHIs back to back. But if people want more information about the modes of action, there's a really good poster that the FRAC group have done that's up on their website. Unfortunately, it's too big to put on a slide or anything like that, but it quite nicely summarises what that's all about. So the other thing that I think about alongside that, when I'm looking at how a chemical works and where I should place it in a program, is how it distributes within the plant. So broadly speaking, there are three types of distribution within the plant. There's contact products, there's translaminar products, and there's systemic products. So contact products essentially act as a physical barrier and stop the spores germinating. Translaminar products are able to cross from one side of a leaf to another, and systemic products, which can be broken down into further groups, are able to move within the plant in a more unified way. So locally systemic products move from one side of the leaf to the other and in and around the leaf. Xylem mobile systemic products can move up the leaf, and amphimobile or two-way mobile products such as Batavia are able to move up and down the plant completely. So when we look again at these similar products, we can see that sulfur is a contact product. It has a degree of volatile activity, especially when it's in powdered form, which is why I know a lot of people use that, especially in warmer temperatures, rather than liquid sulfur. Again, we've got products like cysteine and other triazoles, which are highly systemic, and SDHIs, which are also systemic. So you might use those when the plant is growing quicker, and you might use sulfur or similar products with contact activity earlier in the season where you don't have that rapid growth that you need to keep up with. Similarly, Amylo-X, another contact product, similar type of contact preventative mode of action. And then finally, the other major contributing factor to when to choose a product for me is how that product works in terms of activity. So that's talking about the fungicide activity in terms of, does it act as a protectant, a curative, or an eradicant product? So protectant products can be applied onto the plant, and they just prevent the host invasion. They aren't able to kill the plant once it's developed inside. Curative products are able to kill asymptomatic or symptomless infections, and eradicant products are able to take out sporulating or fully developed expressing diseases. There's very few eradicant products out there, and actually we don't really want to be getting into the eradicant territory because we need to maintain those products in case of emergency. One really good example is SL567A, which you kind of hope never to have to use. So again, we look at these products and we see sulfur is a contact which is at higher rates able to have some erratic activity. Nativo, again, protectant and slightly curative. Vivando, protectant, curative. And we might position those slightly different in different places. So you wouldn't try and use something like Romeo, which is a microbial elicitor, before after disease is broken out, because it wouldn't have any effect. So you're better using that earlier to develop resistance. So really, to summarize, the main factors in fungicide program design, it's know your site, know what the weather's doing and how that will affect what you're doing, and know what chemicals you're using and how they're working. Are they moving within the plant? Are they just coating the surface? Will they have any kickback or curative activity? And it's always, as they always say, prevention is better than the cure. With a lot of these fungicide programs, it's essentially developed in a prophylactic manner, and then we might adjust it later in the season depending on pressures or whether disease is becoming apparent. And as always, you need to speak to the winery about what you use and when. A lot of wineries have issues with sulfur being used late on, so you might have to pull away from that towards the end of the season, or copper later on in the season, which some wineries don't like. So it's always good to have that conversation and discuss that with them before any issues develop. That's really it from me. But yeah, by all means, if there's any questions, just ping them my way, and happily answer all that. I guess I'll hand back over to Joe.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ben. And now, last but not least to speak will be Andrew Landers. Handing over to you, Andrew.
Fine, thanks, Joe. Just share my screen. I'll just find the screens. There we are. Okay. Does that come up, Joe?
Not yet.
Ah.
Just put, click the button at the bottom right-hand side that says share.
Oh, yeah. Right. Go back. Choose that one. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. There. Is that working?
Not yet.
Ah.
The share.
Share's not come up.
When you get your PowerPoint, if you choose that screen, it should have then share screen.
Oh, it thinks it wants me to send it to you.
No. If there's a problem, I do have a copy of your presentation, Andrew, and I can just put it up.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, let me just pop yours up, and we'll just play that. Hopefully everyone can see that now, and all you have to do, Andrew, is just tell me when to click forward if we can do it.
Thank you. Okay, it's up. Joe?
Yeah, it's up.
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Joe mentioned, I'm Andrew Landers. I've come back to live in the UK, having spent 21 years living in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes wine region, and have come back to now live in South Shropshire. I'd like to talk to you today about our research and extension work we did at Cornell, in particular discussing how we get more effective spraying. So when you get the PowerPoint presentation, you'll see I've entitled the presentation, Park the Plume, Getting the Spray Onto the Target. And so the purpose of this presentation is to show us how we can get the spray to effectively get to the target. What happens then, of course, is dependent upon the chemicals or chemistry or whatever you have used. for your disease and insect eradication or control. Next slide. Is that up, Joe? I can't see the slides. So is that slide up, the next one? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. It's up on my screen.
Okay.
Matt and Alex, is it up on your screen? Okay.
Okay. So the challenge, no matter where we're growing grapes, if anywhere in the world, is to produce quality wine. To that end, then we need to improve deposition and reduce the drift. Drift, as you know, is a major issue, but this evening we don't have enough time to get too far into drift. The other area of drift which I'd like to herald is to reduce contamination to the tractors and the sprayer, remembering that someone has to maintain these machines. And as you can see in your bottom left-hand photograph, this very expensive John Deere tractor should be green. People paid a lot of money for it to be green, and therefore to cover it in surround or kaolin clay, in this case, is absolute madness. But we need then to minimize disease by careful use of the sprayer in my subject area. Next slide, please. In this slide, we need to choose the operating parameters for spraying our vineyards. Remember, there is a combination of factors. It's not just calibration and liquid. It's a combination of the liquid flow, so application rate, droplet size, things like that, but also the airflow, that is the speed that the air is leaving the sprayer to help place the droplets onto the canopy and into the canopy. So we refer to that as penetration of the droplets. And to that end, we will look at, this evening, we'll look at 3 factors: direction of the air, the speed of the air, and the volume of the air. And then all of these things are interrelated, and so it ties in very much with the forward speed of our tractor. If we're going too fast, we won't get the penetration or the coverage. Next slide, please. As you know, underlying any engineering subject is the wonderful world of physics. And here you can see the basis to all the droplet information that I've spoken to many of you via the former UK Vinyard Association workshops that I held with my colleague Wayne Wilcox throughout the country over the years. And the basis then is droplet size. If the droplet is too large, it will bounce. If the droplet is too fine, it will drift. So the physics is, if we halve droplet size, we'll increase the number of droplets for the same volume of liquid by eightfold. And so selecting the correct nozzle, for those of you who have traditional hydraulic nozzle sprayers, and I appreciate maybe 50% of you will probably have the mist blower or air shear nozzle, where this doesn't come into play, providing the machine is working properly. Next slide, please. And so to summarize that area, large droplets will bounce, small droplets will stick. Incorrect application rate results in large droplets. And so these factors that you see on the screen are the factors that will create large droplets, which we don't want, okay? So too large a nozzle, where you're putting on the incorrect application rate. Old or worn out nozzles. Now you all appreciate that some of the leading lights in the UK grape industry have been growing grapes now for a number of years. If they've not changed their nozzles or calibrated their sprayer, they're therefore going to have worn out nozzles by now. It all depends on the product you use, how abrasive it is, and the pressure that you drive. And of course, the abuse you give the nozzle. Nozzle abuse in agrarian society is a major issue. So if you or your tractor driver insist on rodding out nozzles with a piece of bent wire, then you're going to make a large hole and therefore you're going to get big droplets. Next slide. This slide shows you clearly in a laboratory the effect of droplets bouncing. You can see this is what we would call a medium to large nozzle at 375 microns in the still air conditions of a lab. When that droplet drops just a short distance of ½ meter, you can clearly see it's bounced 4 times before it comes to rest. You imagine the thousands of droplets flying out of a sprayer, traveling a great distance to a canopy, and you're expecting it to penetrate and you're expecting it to stick without running off the leaves. Then you can see the challenge we've got. Next slide. So if we start at the beginning then of the liquid section, calibration. And you can clearly see on this table or this chart, and you'll be able to read this yourselves at your leisure. If in this case, if we wish to apply 600 litres a hectare with a canopy sprayer with 6 nozzles each side of the sprayer, travelling around 5.5 kilometres an hour, then in rows that are 2.7 metres, you can use a simple formula, and by dib-dabbing on a calculator, you come up with a requirement of 1.25 litres per minute from your sprayer nozzle. If we go to the next slide, here, then you can see the typical nozzle catalogue chart, in this case from the French company Albus. All the manufacturers have these charts, and you can see if we're looking for 1.25 litres per minute, we can choose a yellow nozzle, and as you look down the column and then look across the row to the left, you'll see we can get 1.25, but at a staggering 14 or 15 bar. If we want to use a lower pressure, which I would certainly advise you to do, you can use an orange nozzle, and looking down that column, looking across to the left, you'll clearly see that we can operate this at a much lower pressure. This then increases the life of the sprayer, the life of the pump, reduces wear at the nozzle, and undoubtedly compared to the first nozzle that we looked at, the yellow one, would reduce drift considerably. Remember that the purpose of the nozzle is to create the droplet. The purpose of the air from the sprayer is to deliver that droplet from the nozzle tip into the canopy. It's not the purpose of the nozzle to blast it from the nozzle tip at 150 mile an hour to get it across, a 1.5 meter row width to get this 1.5 meters from the sprayer to the row to get it across. It's the air that's designed for that. So next slide, please. This shows you that today, 2020, there are nearly all the manufacturers of nozzles. Here's some of the more popular ones you'll see here in the UK, produce apps for your smartphone. And so you can just dib-dab the row width, the forward speed, the number of nozzles, and up it comes, tells you which nozzle to use. And so they have them for Android and iPhone. And so that's that. The other good thing about smartphones is you can download forward speed apps. And these apps are really quite accurate because, picking up against the satellite system. And so I would commend those to you. Next slide. Of course, calibration is a fairly long drawn out affair, and it would certainly be a long drawn out affair this evening. And so rather than bore you to tears and realize I'm standing between you and a gin and tonic, then we better crack on. And I would show you this slide. If you go to YouTube, you type in calibrating air blast sprayers. I use that as an example, but you could calibrate any sprayer. And then we've got 8 video clips there that we created at Cornell. You then collect the liquid and you compare the liquid you've collected in 1 minute with the whatever the catalogue said you should be getting. If you find this long and drawn out and rather tedious, then the photo at the bottom shows you the spot-on electronic tip tester. this tester is available here in Europe. And so I would commend this to you if you have a lot of sprayers to calibrate. But if you've only got 1 or 2, even 3, then this is very expensive. And so you may find that quite a problem. But the advantage of it, it's A, it's accurate, and B, it's very fast. So if, as I say, if calibration's a bore, then this would be a road to consider. Next slide. Airflow. There are 3 major factors for us to consider: the direction of the air, the speed of the air, and the volume of the air. Remember, the function of the air is to move the droplets from the sprayer to the target, to try and protect the droplets against the ambient wind blowing over the vineyard, and on about half the sprayers that I've seen in this country to produce the droplets, what we call pneumatic sprayers. Some people call them mist blowers. And then finally, a degree of shaking of the canopy, just a degree, particularly in full canopy, to aid penetration. What we don't want to do is have excessive air, which throws the droplets, takes them right through, onwards and upwards and away from the canopy. And this is why 2-sided sprayers are really, really good. Will give us about 30% more deposition because we're spraying in from both sides of the canopy. The air is coming in from both sides of the canopy, and therefore the turbulence is occurring in the center of the canopy. This is, droplets are removed from the airflow by turbulence, or they run out of puff. So if the puff is right, the volume and speed, then it's okay, but often it isn't because of variable canopy size, and so we need to try and get spraying from both sides if we can. I appreciate some of you will have small vineyards, and therefore this may not, is financially not possible. The other thing, which I think is of great importance, we'll see a little later on again to reconfirm this thing, is, as you know, when people spray, they go up through the rows, spraying each side. They then turn at the headland, maybe miss 2 rows, come back down, and then 5 minutes later, they're spraying on the opposite side of the trellis that they'd sprayed 5-10 minutes earlier. If they've got too large a droplet, you have too many droplets on those leaves, what do? You come and blast it with too high an airspeed, and it shakes the droplets that are already present on the leaf. You've seen this, and so the correct amount of air is absolutely crucial. Next slide. This is some work my colleague Paolo Balsari did at the University of Turin, and you can see where looking at air direction, if we have those funny little deflectors at the top of in this case, an air blast sprayer, they will work and create more useful air. Note the bottom right-hand diagram, top and bottom deflectors in this case. Without them, that air is wasted at the top. Can you clearly see that? And so we need to direct the air. Here's some work we did. This is looking at conventional air blast sprayer, but could equally be an or a sprayer not set up properly, any type of sprayer not set up properly. And you can see where the air can escape in the top left-hand diagram, whereas when we have some form of tower, and towers come in all sorts of shapes as we're about to see, then the tower gives us a horizontal airflow and can direct it to the top, middle and bottom of the canopy. Next slide, please. And here you see an example of this where we have a traditional air blast canopy sprayer where we get less at the top, more in the middle and a lot more at the bottom of the canopy in the light blue. When we look at the darker blue with the tower system, you can see more even coverage, more even penetration throughout the whole canopy. And we again see, on average, about 35% better coverage where tower sprayers are used. Okay. Notice the little bars on the graph, on the bar chart. Always look for little bars on the graph chart. because it shows you the error that they found. If a salesman is showing you a bar chart with no error bars, walk away. Remember, the sprayer rep will tell you his machine or her machine is the best machine since sliced bread. This is rubbish, but I don't want to get into that. Let's move on. Here's a Cima. This is Italian sprayers of great popularity throughout Europe. And again, you can see the tower using both units, as I referred to them in the chart, where we use the both unit system. We get 53% at the top, 34, 46. We see there's a significant difference between that, but certainly when we just use the lower version, which I know a number of you will have, where you buy a less expensive sprayer and just use the lower fingers, then you get much more erratic deposition, as you can clearly see, with significant difference. And so I would commend, once you've saved the extra £1,500, to buy or convert your existing Cima and have it with a tower. That would be the same with any type of sprayer. Next slide, please. And again, this shows you some work. Read this at your leisure, and you can see that without a tower compared to with a tower, and we've looked at left and right-hand side, we look at deposition with a fluorescent tracer, and you'll be able to see there's significant difference between traditional designs and more modern towers. The next area to consider, airflow direction. It is crucial we direct the air, and these 4 slides will show you that. The better sprayers in the world are those that allow us to do adjustment to the airflow. And you can see that in the bottom left, for example, is a photo of a grower in the Barossa Valley in Australia, in South Australia, and you can see where they've taken these sort of octopus legs as the example and have brought them out over and down to, in early season canopy, as you can clearly see, to try and direct the air downwards to act as an umbrella. And this sort of thing you can do on a wet Sunday afternoon with a piece of drainage pipe, 4-inch, 100mm perforated pipe. Don't worry about the perforations, but that corrugated pipe that you can buy in a huge roll, play around with it. And to show you, those of you who've seen my presentations will know I have a bamboo cane and a piece of flagging tape on the end. It will tell you everything you want to know about airflow. And of course, the tunnel sprayer available with or without airflow, but because it's blowing in from both sides and because it's a horizontal flow, we're getting much better deposition. And the photo shows you other makes I've seen as we've progressed. What can you do about it? Operate your sprayer at a low gearbox speed. Okay. Have it going as slowly as you can. And again, you can see from this chart, our results are quite dated now, but doesn't really matter. It still applies. 540 PTO versus 360 PTO. Shut the PTO speed down as long as you're not on land that is mountainous. If there's a slight hill, rolling landscape of the South Downs or whatever, you can do this as long as you maintain the system pressure. You know, maintain whatever you drive at, 10 bar or whatever for the sprayer pressure, and you can see better deposition on both sides of the canopy. The other thing, which again I've mentioned for some years now, but I show this to you, this is fascinating. This shows us what we see. So these series of slides, seeing is believing. What we must do always is monitor what's going on. We can't monitor with the AI, with the active ingredient in the water. What we can do in this example is to use a fluorescent tracer and an ultraviolet light. And you can clearly see that the berries, the grapes, are nicely covered at the front of the grapes. The rachis is nicely covered, and the cane. How about that for a little biology snippet from an engineer? See, I've picked up some stuff as I travel. So rachis, cane, and berries. Yeah, I've always been impressed by my increasing knowledge of this subject. So there we are. But when you turn the bunch of grapes around, as you see in the right-hand diagram, right-hand photo, and the middle photo, you can clearly see that the air hasn't got the spray to the back of the grapes. Why? Because the air is going too fast. Next slide. This fine gentleman, Professor Prandtl, who is an Austrian physicist, in 1910 wrote a paper on what we nowadays call aerodynamics or fluid mechanics. And this shows, you'll see the compost bin, top left photo, in the snow. When the snow blows from the west, in this case, from the left-hand side, this classic vortex occurs where the wind goes around the top part in a clockwise direction and on the underside, if you wish, in an anti-clockwise direction. And it creates what's called a classic horseshoe vortex. Up here in the chilly north of Shropshire, in the winters, we can get some snow, and you'll see this around telegraph poles and trees. Those of you who wish, why not sell your vineyard in Kent or Sussex and sell it and buy an Audi R8 Spider? You just about have enough money to buy one of these things. This car, as you know, is a supercar, fantastic. You'll notice if you drive at say 70 miles an hour along the M3, starts raining, what would you do? Well, you put your foot down and you go faster. And so as the air goes up over the hood, not the hood, the bonnet, up over the bonnet, it will go right over the top of the car and it will collect way back behind you. And so this is showing Prandtl's law. And so air will go around a spherical object. What's a bunch of grapes? A spherical object. You look at a bunch of grapes from the other side, and I apologize for not putting the photograph in that I have, but I have some video clips, which I have shown to a number of the UK VA workshops, which shows you the droplets going around a bunch of grapes. Absolutely fascinating. So shut the air down. Okay, remember the Audi Spider. If you want to get wet in the cockpit of an Audi, drive slowly. Those of us who are just mere mortals will know the same effect will happen in a Mazda Miata. So we don't have to save up for too long, okay? And the second-hand one at that, so it'd be all right. Next slide, please, Joe. So we're getting down to the last bit. Seeing is believing. This series of photos shows you that if we drive at the same speed, in this case, 3 miles an hour, then, or 4.8 kilometers an hour, you can see the changes in coverage. In the first photo, photo number 1, you see at a low application rate, 300, it's a conversion. You know that America don't believe the metric system will catch on. And so in this case, it's 35 gallons an acre, which equates to approximately 350 litres a hectare or thereabouts. You can see the coverage, very nice, small droplets all over everything. As we progress through photo 2, photo 3, you can see the droplets coalescing. You can see them running down the leaf veins to the margin, and then they sit there. Notice in photo 4, the middle of the leaf has hardly any liquid on it. Why? Because as the liquid runs down the leaf, it gathers, coalesces and runs down, runs away. And what do we do? As I've already mentioned, you spray one side of the canopy, you go up to the headland, you turn around, miss 2 rows, come back down, and 5 minutes later, you're spraying the opposite side of the canopy that you sprayed 5-10 minutes ago. And in doing so, if you have too much air, or you have too high an application rate, you just blast these droplets away from the leaf. And so in photos 3 and 4, you would lose a hell of a lot of spray that you spent good time trying to put on. So again, make sure the amount of air is correct. Here's another way. It was mentioned about kaolin clay. So this is kaolin clay. You can use that as a tracer dye. Next slide. You can use water sensitive cards, incredibly expensive. So befriend somebody like Ben who will be able to get you them from people like Syngenta, who Syngenta make them. Maybe you don't want to do that. A plank of wood even is a good example, top right-hand diagram, and you can see you put the plank of wood between the top wire and the bottom wire, and you just drive by and you see where the spray is going, so you can adjust your sprayer rather crudely, not with the sophistication of the patinator bottom right, but at least it's a start, and I commend that to you. Next slide, please, Joe. As far as forward speed is concerned, this one slide shows it all. And you can see if you drive at the right forward speed, you will fill the canopy with the right amount of air. You're not blowing through the canopy, except, of course, where you have a gap, you know, where your vine has given up the ghost and died, or hasn't grown quite as well. But the majority of the air is staying there. And I liken it to that, the top row shows you the beer glasses, or lemonade glasses, and the barman's got one of those hoses that they fill up with lemonade. So if you go too fast, you get underserved with lemonade. If you go too slowly and it blows through, you get overflowing. And so we don't want that. And so the best advice is for you, as let's say you're the vineyard manager, stand there with a cell phone and the driver's driving a tractor and you're speaking to them, and you say, just keep driving, go a bit faster, till you find the optimum amount in this ever-changing canopy. So all of this, plus a whole load more, is available in this book. Here's the advertising spot. You know, this is the free presentation, so I'm allowed to advertise for 2 seconds. And so buy my book and you'll see all of this in glorious color. And if you're, as you are, based in this country, but 99% of you, then if you send me an email, I'll get them sent to you from this, from here, from Shropshire. Otherwise, you have to pay a huge amount of money, 30, 40 pounds to pay for the mailing costs from the US. And you won't want to do that, I'm sure. So send me an email and I'll tell you how much you can pay, and so on. And so finally, my epilogue, I don't have conclusions. I've not, not finished working. It's still ongoing. Epilogue. Understand the science, apply technology to help you, and use common sense. When I wrote this, I felt it was a bit like Boris Johnson in the nighttime, understand the science. So follow the science, etc. And I thought, no, I shouldn't mention it, but I did. So there we are. So best of luck to you with the rest of your spraying season by shutting down this air and stopping these big droplets bouncing. Thank you very much. Take questions with the group.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. We now have a little bit of time. I know we're past 7, but we do have a little bit of time for questions. Now, there was a couple that have come in. The first one is for Andrew.
Oh, right.
Yep, first one for you. Andrew, how far from the nearest leaf should the spray cones meet to ensure the nearest is properly covered?
Right, yes, good question. And so you want to have the cone meeting just before the leaf, just before. And this is a problem, I know, in certain parts of Europe and California, where I've also worked, where you have these very narrow canopies, narrow row spacing. And if you don't have enough space, you get striping of the product along the canopy. So they must meet just before the canopy. And if that's an issue, then you need to speak to your nozzle supplier and get wide angle nozzles. Most conventional hollow cones are 80 degrees, but you can get wider spreads. And so I would recommend you speak to someone to locate a better bet. And if it's more of a vertical spray, then look at using 110-degree flat fans to give you that wider angle. If for example, you have, say, 2-meter row width or something like that. If the row is very narrow, it's a challenge. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. Another question, actually, this one's for Alex or Matt. Please could you say something about Phomopsis? We had this from last year with large rainfall amounts last autumn. You're on mute.
There aren't really any specific treatment that you can use for Phomopsis, although if you follow a general fungicide spray, it will help you to keep it under control. Phomopsis lives pretty much in every vineyard, and you can live with Phomopsis. Obviously, when you come to do the winter pruning, you will try to select the canes within your crown that they look the healthiest in order to reduce, to carry on the infection on and on. Hygiene of the vineyard, removing your prunings, and is really down to best practice at the end of the day. Matt?
The other thing I would say is that Phomopsis is often confused with just sort of overwinter bleaching of canes, and I don't think it's always necessarily Phomopsis. Ben might have something to say. Usual chemical controls are Mancozeb and, oh no, we can't use dithiamine anymore. Mancozeb-based products are the usual thing. I think Phomopsis becomes significant where it gets so bad that you're losing shoots through breakages, and the socket of the shoot or the cane where it attaches the older part of the wood often can, if it's severe enough, can go sort of black and gooey, and then it becomes detached. I think it is around, I think a lot of us sort of tolerate, it's at a sort of tolerable level. Yeah.
It was a quick question for Ben. Your table showing chemicals for powdering mildew with their mode of action and showing what type of fungicides they are, contact, etc., was useful. Is there something similar for downy and botrytis?
Yeah, if you've got the toolkit, the agri toolkit, then there's some details about most of that stuff in there, and that's always quite a helpful piece of kit really for most of this type of stuff. Note on what Matt said earlier, yeah, Mancozeb is about the only thing going. Some strobilurins have some effects on Phomopsis, but they're not great. They're not the answer. Unfortunately, we're likely to lose Mancozeb at some point next year, which is not going to be great. I have read some research that says Serenade can have some effects on Phomopsis in an organic situation, but it's a bit expensive to be applying just for Phomopsis really.
There's two more questions, one for Andrew and one probably for Alex or Matt. So for Andrew, a question, could you comment on the use of electrostatic sprayers?
Yes, I can. It's difficult in a public platform to comment too strongly, but I have strong views. And what I say to my growers that I meet at workshops is I would much prefer that you spend the extra money on fine-tuning your existing sprayer rather than buying one. So that's as diplomatic as I can get. So my experience for many years, you appreciate these have been around since the 1960s, but we still only see a few in vineyards, is because of the attraction of the electrostatic field, the spray goes to the nearest leaf first. The first question was asking about leaves, so it's interesting. So it's attracted the first leaf, and then as the sprayer moves down a row, the next subsequent droplets go. And so you tend to get coverage on the outside, but very poor penetration. So in full canopy, as an example, let's say an unmanaged canopy, you'll have trouble getting the stuff to go in. They also need incredibly low rates of spray in most cases because you need to charge each droplet, so they need very fine droplets. And so these low sprays are a challenge if you use powdered sulfur. And if you put powder in your tank, so you then have to start buying micronized sulfur. So you've got a different cost structure, etc. So there are more challenges to using them than I would suggest it's worth. And so without upsetting too many people, because human nature is such that you say, well, I just bought one, you know, well, you're not going to admit you bought a pup. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think you have bought a pup. But I wouldn't dream of doing that in public. But no, I think you'd be wiser to tune up a more traditional sprayer. And you can tell, to justify that, you can see by the number of manufacturers who've been making electrostatics for more than 10 years in the world. There's hardly any. They come and go, just like fashion hats at Ascot.
One last question.
Sorry,
That's all right. We've got a couple of minutes, and then I think that the technology will fold on us. One very quick last question, probably Alex and Matt. There was a question, if an open canopy is best for botrytis control, and you were to do leaf stripping at flowering, is it too early, and would it affect fruit set?
Well, can I go?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. When we say leaf stripping, we don't mean strip the canopy down completely to the bone. If you do remove just a few leaves, strategically placed and carefully, in order to help air movement a little, and not necessarily on both sides of the canopy, we tend to do leaf removal in stages, and you always start once you are at least 75% flowering plus, so towards to the end of flowering, and you will start to remove some of the leaves on the eastern side of the canopy, where you want the sun to get on as soon in the morning when you have this heavy dew, and then perhaps later on when fruit test is on, get on and do some on the western side. So it's a sort of a calibrated leaf removal. Mm-hmm. And particularly in our situation as the biodynamic vineyard, we tend to do this by hand. So it is a bit labor intensive, but we can control the amount of leaves that we remove it and when.
Thank you, Alex. I think that at 7:30 we will, the webinar will close down. So I've just got a couple of moments just to apologise hugely for the technology at the beginning. The gremlins really crept in, and I'm not too sure why, so I can only apologise. And to thank all participants, and to thank very much our speakers, so Alex and Matt and Andrew and Ben. And in 2 weeks' time, we will be looking at canopy management. But I will say goodbye now and thank you, everybody, and end the webinar. So thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joe. Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Joe. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Cheerio.
Bye.